Hi.
All right.
Hang on.
Oh,
It's gonna be good.
okay. I call the meeting to order. Any public comment on closed session items? Okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and read this public comment information. Nobody's here yet, but I'll probably read it again if people show up. The governing board encourages public discussion of all items on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address the board needs to submit a comment form prior to the start of the agenda item discussion. Comment forms will not be accepted for any items once the item has been announced. A person wishing to address the board shall first be recognized by the president and shall then proceed to comment as briefly as the subject permits. There is a 3-minute maximum speaking time per person on a single agenda item. The limit on discussing each item is 20 minutes. Board bylaw 9323 states the board cannot comment on a non-agenda item. However, the matter may be placed on the agenda of a subsequent meeting for action or discussion by the board per the Brown Act. And please be advised our board meeting is being recorded. Leaving it for closed session, we will discuss the following items. Item 2.1 is public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code 54947. Item 2.2, public employee discipline dismissal release pursuant to Government Code 54947. Item 2.3, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.9. Negotiator Marlene Barnes. Employees organizations are Sunol AFT Chapter 1494 local, CSEA Chapter 862, and management classified employees. Item 2.4, public employee performance evaluation superintendent. And we'll go ahead and go into closed session. We're going to call the open ceremony meeting of the board in public at 6:05. Thanks for waiting. We would have started at 6. We didn't have a quorum then, so we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming. There was a public comment announcement earlier when we started at 5, and I'm going to read it again since everybody has shown up here. The governing board encourages public discussion of all items on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address the board needs to submit a comment form prior to the start of the agenda item discussion. Comment forms will not be accepted for any items once the item has been announced. And they're available in the back if you want to fill one out. A person wishing to address the board shall first be recognized by the president, it's me, and shall then proceed to comment as briefly as the subject permits. There's a 3-minute maximum speaking time per person on a single agenda item. The limit on discussing each item is 20 minutes total. Board bylaw 9323 states the board cannot comment on a non-agenda item. However, the matter may be placed on the agenda of a subsequent meeting for action or discussion by the board per the Brown Act. Please be advised our board meeting is being recorded. And so just the way it works is we're going to go through the meeting. When we get to this item, it looks like there's quite a few for agenda item 9.5. And so the way that it works is we'll open up the item for discussion. I'll call the names of the people who filled it out. And I was new to this whole process, so maybe you guys don't know how this whole meeting thing works, but basically you get to talk without anyone interrupting you. It's not a debate, it's just you're speaking for up to 3 minutes. We're not going to debate with you, we're not going to argue with you, we're not going to agree with you. Once everybody's talked, then we'll discuss. And same thing, at that point, it's not time for you to jump in and make more comments. Excuse me. I didn't know that that's how it worked before, so I'm just telling everybody now so that we can just, keep the meeting flowing, be civil to each other, listen to each other's opinion, and then the board will decide. So thank you very much. First is action on closed session to report out. The board approved the following personnel documents: a contract for occupational therapy services And there was a 2-3 grade teacher salary schedule placement correction. And that's it for the closed session. Item number 5 is approval of the agenda. And I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Same motion.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda's approved. Number 6 is our annual audit report. 6 point, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
6.1 is the Sunol Glen Unified School District's 2020 to 2021 audit report conducted by E.D. Bailey. LLP.
All right. Unfortunately, our consultant was unable to attend tonight's meeting, so I'm going to do my best. I'm not an auditor, so no judging. And of course, we have a full audience. And Shailesh is here from the county, and so he has agreed to chime in as we go along. So the first part is the letter that they send. This is sort of their annual letter that they put. It describes, and just for the audience here, you can I'm going to go over this verbatim. So this will be like a 4-hour item. No, I'm just going to do the highlights. But this is in the board backup. I mean, if you ever do want to put yourself to sleep reading something or want to have burning questions, the information is available. The first part is just the letter that comes out to the board every year, and it describes the process and purpose of auditing Sunol Glen's financials. And then it's a definition of terms. So that's in the first couple of pages. And then, oops, if you could flip to page 4. The last page says, it's right before there. The 4th page.
Is it the?
It's this last little
Okay, sorry.
paragraph right there. Right there. Thank you. Just want to point out again, I'm just going to do the highlights, but significant difficulties encountered during the audit. And this portion, they said they wanted to let the board know that they encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management relating to performance of the audit. And hang on, Sean, don't move yet. Let me tell you where I'm at. I'm now going past the table of contents, and I've moved to page 1 of the actual report, independent auditors report. That's okay. Let me see. No, it's actually labeled as page number 1.
Oh.
Report on. No, keep going. Sorry, I don't know. In the letter or in the actual?
I'm in
I
the
think the next page. There, stop. All right, well, I'm gonna read this. I'm so sorry, I don't know. Okay, the report on the financial statements, they wanted to share that they have audited the accompanying financial statements of the government activities, each major fund, the aggregate remaining fund information of Sunol Glen Unified School District as of the year ended June 30th, 2021. So again, the audit is for the previous year's book. And the related notes to the financial statements, which collectively comprise the district's basic financial statements as listed in the table of contents. So yeah, it's right. It was right after the table of contents. It's the very next page after the table.
Oh, here it is.
I think it's right here. Where you have it. I think you read this part
Yeah,
right here.
I
when you're-
did. I did. So I'm going right in order. And then down at the bottom of the page,
It's the same.
on the same page at the bottom, it just said, so go real slowly. We believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate for the basis for our audit opinions. So they're basically wanting to verify to the board that the audit was done appropriately. They had sufficient evidence of all the things they need to look at to then come up with their findings. On the next top of the very next page, scroll slow, opinions, there you go. In our opinion, the financial statement referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial portion of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of Sunol Glen Unified School District as of June 30th, 2021, and the respective changes in financial position and where applicable, cash flows, therefore for the year then ended in accordance with the accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So they are also wanting the board to understand that they use the accepted accounting principles in doing their work. Now about 2 pages down, it says page 4 at the bottom. Right there, that should be 4. And we're going to go down to the bottom, reporting the district as a whole. This is a statement of net position of the statement of activities, reported information about the district as a whole. These statements include all assets, deferred outflows of resources, liabilities, and deferred inflows of the resources of the district using the accrual basis of accounting. So again, just explaining the process, which is similar to the accounting used by most private sector companies. So this isn't something that just because we're a governmental agency, they do differently, because they do want to make sure that they're looking at our financials in a way that would be acceptable in any type of company. All the current year's revenues and expenses are taken into account regardless of when the cash is received or paid. And then just to clarify on page 5, down about the middle of the page, government activities. It says government activities. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. All the district services are reported in this category. This includes the education of kindergarten through grade 8. So they're really specifying what this is more specific to Sunol Glen. And on the ongoing effort on improving and maintaining buildings and sites, property taxes, state income tax, user fees, interest income, federal, state, and local grants, as well as general obligation bonds, finance these activities. So those are all the areas that they look at that pertain to our sweet little district. And then this next page is the district as a trustee financial highlights. This is the page I really want to focus on and spend a few minutes on. This is critical. The district ended the fiscal year with positive financial outlook, and that's always a board priority, is to make sure that we maintain our positive financial outlook, staying healthy in our books, meeting the state's requirements of a 5% reserve for economic uncertainties of $200,407. So I know that many people are familiar with the fact that most districts have to have a 3% reserve. The reason that ours is 5% is because we're a small district. And so for that dollar equivalent, we're really small. And so it's actually to protect the district by having an increased percentage. And it's just an economies of scale. So if you are wondering why it's 5 instead of 3, that's why, and it's mandatory. Combining general fund revenues were $409,000 higher than revenues received in 1920. The increase in that revenue is attributed to the following. The 2021 fiscal year continued to be marked by school closures and general uncertainty as a result of the unprecedented health pandemic brought on by the COVID-19 virus. Another reason that the revenue was higher is the district's revenues were significantly higher than in 1920, primarily due to the relief efforts both at the state and federal level. So the district was the recipients of many grants that were specifically geared towards addressing learning loss and making sure we have PPE, ventilation in the school, all of those things that were needed to keep school operating, but they were given to us as one-time only grants and they're restricted funds. These funds were non-recurring and therefore were not used to pay for ongoing expenses. Another reason is that total expenditures increased slightly by $3.7 thousand. All expenditures decreased while the exception of capital outlay and other operating expenses. The reason for the increase in capital outlay was the addition of the new playground equipment that was funded via the grant from East Bay Regional Parks. Whoop, whoop. Services and other beautiful playground. Services and other operating expenses increased due to incidental costs associated with the installation of new playground equipment, such as the storage of the equipment to be reused, removable, roller, etc. The Sunol Glen Unified School District serves as the heart of the community and continues to be an integral part of the numerous community activities and services. The district continues to maintain the quality preschool and daycare programs during the year. So that's just the highlighted piece that I would like to point out. I think is an important part of our audit. And next, Sean, bear with me. The next is just the actual spreadsheet. So we're not going to go over those, but they're there for you. And next is page 12. So we keep scrolling through the spreadsheet. So this is the economic factors in next year's budgets and rates. They want to make sure that we understand the following. Enrollment is projected to decrease to 263 based on current and reported enrollment. However, LCFF funding will be based on 2021 ADA or 279.06 due to the hold harmless provision due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we discussed that at several of the board meetings that the governor was holding districts harmless to the loss of their ADA because of the pandemic, districts across the state of California are in a declining enrollment pattern, mostly. As in previous years, carryover or unspent categorical funds from 2021 will be budgeted at the first interim reporting period in 21-22. Both federal and state revenues are projected to be higher in 21-22 due to continued pandemic relief funding. And the 21-22 budget assumes routine increases for salaries and benefits based on step and column, increases and possible increases in statutory benefit rates, the STRS and PERS part that the district is obligated to fund. The district expects to continue to meet the 5% statutory reserve requirement for economic uncertainties in 21-22, as we already covered. And then, I know this will make you sad, but I'm actually going to go to the very last page. Yay, well, look at this. Whoa, we're skipping through all this. It's all really important, obviously very important. It's a lot of spreadsheets of just verifying what I went over. So every audit report, their job is to go through our books and help with corrective action. That's called findings. And findings are actually, we don't see them as necessarily a negative thing. It's something we want them to help us to make sure that we're doing all of our accounting and all of our procedures appropriately and correctly and accurately. But the good news is there were no audit findings in Sunol this year. So that's awesome. And the reason that this full report looks so positive and talks about those highlighted pieces is due to our staff. And so I just want to give it, it's a lot of work, a lot of things that the auditors will ask to pull for samples and for verification, a lot of time and effort. So a big thank you to Teresa Donovan, our fiscal service clerk. It really hits her desk a lot. Mickey Whitfield has to do all the personnel items that they ask for. Cindy Grant, there's a lot of, obviously, with attendance that gets hit, and our county partners with Shailesh Rajmi and Michael Evans, they got, and I'm not sure if not Nimrat and Shireen were part of it, but I know
She helped, yeah.
she helped.
It's like a team effort.
Yeah, Shailesh and Michael did the lion's share. So could you please share that we're very grateful and we appreciate the partnership and making sure we're doing everything correctly.
Same
So
here.
that's a lot. Does the board have any questions for Shailesh? Okay, thank you. And if you do have questions at a later point, please, as always, feel free to let me know and I can report it out at the next board meeting as well. But that's our, is there anything else you want to?
No, I think that's perfect. And, just wanted to say thank you. I mean, that was such an extensive report, Molly. No finding is a big thing for us, just kind of assures us that we're on the right path to continue to ensure that, we do, all of that. That's always our goal. So
Yeah.
to learn and grow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for recognizing the people that helped make it happen. We love no findings.
Love the outcome, exactly.
Okay, moving on, number 7 is board and staff reports and communication. 7.1 is the bond measure process and information report. John Isom.
You see it. Hi, John. Hi,
Welcome, John.
I'm back.
Welcome.
Welcome back.
Nice
How are
to
ya?
see you.
How are you? Somebody's there, and I think we've got a copy up there.
Yep.
As well. So would you like me just to sit here? more or less?
Run us through it.
Run you through it. Okay. So what I'm here to do is to give the district an update, on the district's potential for a bond program. By way of history, going back in time, or way back in time, this district, the voters overwhelmingly passed a measure in the mid to late 90s. And that measure actually is going to fall off the books in 2 years, 2024. But of course, the district certainly has a lot of facilities needs. You went through a capital plan, master facilities plan, and came up with a project list. And in March of 2020, we went out to voters and just a little bit short of where we needed to be, got 51%. That was a particularly difficult election. I shared with some of you guys the information, but just for the benefit of the audience, historically, over the last 20 years, general obligation bonds for school districts pass about 80% of the time. The worst prior to the March of 2020 was the June of 2006, and 60% of districts passed. So pretty much there's always going to be a majority, and in some cases, 4 out of 5, presidential, you get 90%. After 9/11, it was actually 100%. But in March of 2020, we had COVID, stock market was going crazy.
We had Prop 13 that people were confused about, thinking it was going to change the original Prop 13. And that resulted in success rate of about 46%. That was it. Not to be dismayed, a lot of districts went back in November, including about 9 of our clients. 88% or 8 out of the 9 of our guys passed, and statewide the success rate was about 80%. So a bit of a return to normal. As Prop 39, which was the original thing that was passed in 2000, allowed us to do these bond measures at a 55% voter approval. One of the criteria was you had to go at a regularly scheduled election day. So that's why you didn't hear from me in 2021. There was no elections. But here we are, 2022. Districts are considering going in June. They're looking at going in November. And if it's not 2022, it's 2024, right? And then, of course, construction cost escalation's really been hitting districts a lot. So if you don't even want to know how much things are as far as expenses. So this presentation is very brief, but it's just to give you an update. It's an update on your tax base, potential bond program, timeline, and some context of kind of where you guys stand. Because as beautiful as this school is, you haven't had a lot of change as far as major investment, capital investment. So the things that were really old are now even older. The things that are, that were out of compliance are still out of compliance. And there's probably some things that are now out of compliance that weren't out of compliance a couple of years. Okay. So this is just kind of bring you up to speed on that. So let's take folks through this. So the first slide is about your tax base, and that's how these bond programs work, right? It's about your assessed value, which is all the value within your school boundaries as assessed by the county assessor, not market value, not, oh man, my house is worth so much I can sell for it. No, it's what is it assessed? And anyone who's been in their home for a long time, those assessed values are pretty low. But we look at all assessed values. So that's homes, gas stations, restaurants, dirt, farms, anything that is currently paying a tax to the county is part of this. So you can see in 2022 at the bottom, another year of growth, very encouraging. Even with the pandemic, your assessed value is growing. So you're at an all-time high of $534 million. If I direct your attention to the right-hand side, I alluded to that earlier, right? 1999 was the last time voters approved a bond measure, 84%, great support there. Obviously, the money's all been spent, and the tax rate this year is $52.10 per 100,000. Based on our calculations, we think that's on the lower side. So sometimes what happens is that the county overcollects in a year prior, they build up some reserve, and then they say, oh, I've got a little bit too much money. I don't need to raise as much in taxes the next year. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see a little bit of an increase in 22, 23. The other thing that's of note is that last bullet point. It's about your bonding capacity. Every school district in California has a little calculation, and it is a simple one. It's 2.5% times your assessed value is your bonding capacity, less outstanding debt, and then you have what's known as your net debt capacity. The good news for you is that you have no worries. You're not even close to your bonding capacity, which is 13.4 million or 13.2 on the net. So you don't even have to worry about, hey, what do we do if we've issued so much debt? Because you haven't. You're actually, you'll see one of the next slides that you're one of the lesser issuers. We'll just call it that in the county. Let's look at the next slide. So as far as proceeds go, this is kind of the budget page, right? And so we kind of ran 2 scenarios. The first of which is that top table. That's just a straight up, let's just do a brand new tax. For the next couple of years, it'll be on top of the old tax. And then when the old one goes away, then we'll be left with the new tax. And then the other alternative is that second bullet point, which is let's not increase the taxes at all. What if we just said to voters, hey voters, no taxes, no tax rate increase, gonna be the same of what you've been paying all these years, but instead of letting it drop off, let's take that capacity, that tax capacity, and let's fix up our schools. Let's take care of some of those outstanding issues that we have with respect to roofing and plumbing and electrical and some of those needs. The difference, of course, as you can look there, the $52.10 versus the $60 is about $1 million in difference, right? So you do forego or you do give up a little bit of your total bond potential by not having that tax in the first 2 years. But the difference from a tax rate perspective is instead of let's call it $12 tax for 2 years, you just wait and then you just keep that $52.10 tax target as well. So I think there's certainly something to be said about the second option, the no tax rate increase. Gets you a lot of money. Probably wouldn't be the equivalent of your purchasing power had you been successful in March of 2020, just because construction cost escalation is outpacing your tax-based growth. Right, you're going at 3% a year, but escalation's going at 10%. So, but this is kind of a budget page, so it's still very good. You could still do a lot of positive things with a successful bond program. As you know, their needs are significant here, and this is, I think, a really unique opportunity, an opportunity that is finite in its window, right? And once it gets paid off, then the next time is, oh, we have to raise taxes again or increase your taxes as opposed to just keep paying what we've been paying. Next slide.
Is this going to be tacked on for 30 more years?
Yeah, typically, just like a home mortgage, you kind of have a 30-year repayment period. A lot will depend on where interest rates are at the time of a successful election, right? The one good thing about COVID, everything else is bad, I think, is that interest rates are just beyond low, the lowest they've ever been in history, like the history of mankind, basically. In America, you have not had a lower borrowing period ever. They've been going up. You hear a lot about inflation. The way that the feds control inflation is they make money a little more expensive to get. And so that means they kind of increase interest rates. Now, we work somewhat independently of what the feds do. So the feds might say, well, we're going to raise the interfund borrowing rate between banks. But if there's not a lot of supply and there's tremendous demand for bonds, that's going to ultimately set the price. So what the feds do sets the mood, but the setting of the price is actually going to be based on the amount of investors and the amount of supply. Okay. So 30 years is, I think, is kind of the estimated time period. It could be 29, 28, could be 31, 32, but ballpark 30, I think gets you. Next slide. Oh, this is the sad one. Okay, comparing yourselves to your Alameda County brothers and sisters. There's two ways to look at it. One is just straight up taxes, like what's our tax rate compared to others? And the other is how much are we spending kind of on a bond dollars passed per student? Simply, what's the authorization divided by the student? And you get an idea of where you stand and where you compare yourselves to. Now, Sunol, Glen, you guys are unique enough that you probably say, hey, we don't really compare ourselves to anyone, right, in that group. But you're certainly not Emory Unified, and you're certainly not Piedmont, right? You're very unique. But I think it gives some important context to the community and to you to say, this is what other districts are doing. This is how much they're spending on a bond dollar per student. And on the left side, this is what tax rates people are facing in these other communities. I mean, look at Dublin. I mean, they passed 5 bonds to year 1. Tax rates almost $200, and people aren't, fleeing Dublin to go to greener pastures. So it's important. Just because you're near the bottom doesn't mean you do it. Obviously, you have to have the need, but I certainly think you can say we have the need, right? If you had a brand new, beautiful school, people would say, well, who cares? We like being at the bottom and we don't need it, but you do have the need and you're at the bottom. So I think those are some relevant data points to share. All right, next slide. I think it might be the last slide. Okay. So what do districts do that are in your shoes right now, right? Districts, I have a need. I have no way to fund that need. State's not going to come up and give us all these dollars. So what do? We explore, going back to the voters in this case, and that's really what we kind of have as far as today. When you look at the line items here, board meeting, explore the feasibility of the bond. While things look good, last time we kind of decided to go out and then kind of things went off the rails. Doesn't mean that things will necessarily look good right now. So we don't know. So what we want to do and what we want to get by way of direction from the board is, yeah, it makes sense to explore. And what does that entail? 2 things that we do when we work with the districts. One is kind of a statistical, scientific, and then the other is kind of a qualitative. So think quantitative, qualitative. So quantitative, you do a phone survey and an email survey. And we ask voters just a handful of questions, right? One of the most fundamental is, if an election were held today, would you vote yes or no? And you give them some details about that. We might ask them also, if you knew we were going to spend money on this project, on leaky roofs, inadequate electrical, health and safety, security, right? Would you be more likely or less likely? Would you be more likely to vote for it if the tax rate was going to increase to $60? How about if we didn't increase the tax? So we're able to get data back and statistics back, and then that gives you an idea of, all right, do we have enough support to put something on the ballot again? And if you were kind of below 55% and definitely below 50% on some of those two questions, then the answer is, you know, your community is not ready. And so 2024, as painful as that might be, 2024 is kind of the reset. Or that data comes back favorably, and you can say, hey, you know, we got 65% support among the community. So that's quantitative, and we need that because that's the everyday voter. The qualitative, you know, for some of you that went through the process before is, hey, what are some of the key stakeholders think? You know, some of the movers and shakers, large landowners, longtime residents, people that might be civic leaders or community leaders or elected officials, right? The people that might sway public opinion one way or another. Let's have that conversation with them too. And that's qualitative because you can't really put a number to it. I mean, I guess you could say, well, we spoke to these 10 people and 8 out of 10, but statistically, that's not really valid. It's just more so, all right, you've heard our plan. We have the needs. We think this tax rate extension, you know, if that's what the survey kind of points you in the right direction, we think this tax rate extension idea makes sense. What do you think of these projects, the tax rate extension and putting it on the ballot? And you want to get that positive feedback from them. The reason we do that is because each one of us has our own sphere of influence, right? And our friends. And one thing we always cringe when you hear someone say, like, hey, all of my friends say it's a terrible idea. That's right. That's why we do a survey, because we don't go off of all of your friends, or my gut tells me now's not the right time. That's why we do a survey, because your gut is something we don't want to rely on. Okay. But when you have those two things together, right? There's good stakeholder qualitative feedback and the quantitative feedback that you get from the survey, then ideally what you adopt as a resolution calling the election is reflective of what you got through this exercise of explore. And if the voters say, no way, no new taxes, tax rate extension, okay, then that's what you give them, even if it costs you $1 million. That's my advice, right? If they say, hey, I'm for all these projects, but I just don't want to pay for, you know, the new swimming pool that you guys are proposing. Not that you're proposing. But if they say, we don't want to pay for a pool, but we'll pay for 90% of the other stuff, hey, great, thank you so much, right? It's their taxes, it's their school, you know, let's give them their program. What all this entails and the culmination of everything would be an adoption in June or technically July. And you have the first week in August to submit that resolution calling the election. So if all the stars line up, first week in August, go down to the register of voters, turn it in, and then you've got a campaign on your hands. And then usually it's a 2.5 to 3 month process to go out and try to educate your voters and make sure that all of that feedback that we got from those same voters and those people, we reinforce it and we remind people and we send mailers to, you know, everybody, and we do social media and other different things to make sure that they stay supportive. Again, the hope is give them something that they'll support and then just give it to them. So, and then November 8th, 2022 would be election day. Issuing the bonds, it would basically be within about a 60 to 90 day period, kind of depending on when we start. So the district would have money as soon as basically early 2023. And then at that point in time, assuming you have DSA approved projects or kind of quick start projects that don't require DSA, you know, you might be making improvements as soon as the summer of 23, with potentially the lion's share being in 2024. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to take questions on the topic.
If it's just an extension, then it wouldn't propose in 2023, it would go on until when Sunol stops that tax.
Correct. Yeah.
Let's pretend like I asked that question.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
So Mike, good question, Mike.
Sorry.
Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, so.
It's okay. It's all this, you know.
Because there's a differential between when bonds are actually sold and when the tax bill goes out, right? The tax bill goes out every time around the same time. And yet we can sell bonds whenever, right? And you certainly want to take advantage of low interest rates. So it's like, if you had the authority right now, we would be saying sell tomorrow. Even though they don't set the tax rate until June 30th, And the tax rate doesn't go out until September, right, of 2022. So the reason that they want you to be able to get the money as soon as possible, but they also acknowledge that there's a timing consideration. So the law allows you what's called, up to 3 years of capitalized interest. And it just is code for saying you can sell the bonds now and not make a payment for 3 years. But in this case, it would be more like you'd sell the bonds in 2023 and you wouldn't make a payment for 18 months. So yeah, so we would structure it in a way to make sure, again, assuming that's what the voters wanted, we would structure it in a way that that tax rate would not happen until the old one drops. Good question, Mike.
One other question is, what's the opportunity for the matching funds from the state for school projects?
Yeah,
Facilities projects?
so there are state dollars, they've all been spoken for. So unless this district is already in line and qualified and just waiting, you would be waiting for the next statewide bond. If you remember, in March of 2020, there was a statewide bond for schools, but it got the moniker Prop 13. And everyone thought the statewide school bond, that all it was, they've done a dozen of them, in the last 30 years. Somehow that got turned into, this is going to ruin property taxes, how they collect property taxes, and suspend the original 1978 Prop 13, which it doesn't. So the talk is that the state is likely to put another statewide school bond on the ballot in November. And interestingly enough, the last 20 years, there's been 4 statewide bonds or 5 statewide bonds. And the average success rate of districts is actually higher when there is a statewide bond on the same ballot, as opposed to lower. Some people are like, oh, people are just going to vote no on all the bonds or something like that. But that's actually not the case. You actually have a little bit more of a pop, a little more benefit, perhaps, because maybe there's a statewide campaign about schools, but it's the money that comes for a statewide bond is just out of the state's general fund. It has not a new tax on anybody. So we have to wait for a new state bond to be approved, and then I would assume there'd be a big pot of money available for match.
Guess we don't know if they're going to do it or not yet at this point.
Yeah, they still have a couple of months, but I mean, that's the talk. I mean, there's so much need, they one thing they did do is they increased developer fees by a lot. Your community is not going to benefit a ton by it, but they're trying to do what they can to help out school districts with state bonds and developer fees. But in the grand scheme of things, that makes up about 25% of all monies that go to fix up schools is state aid. Where you have to have that local match to get the state aid and developer fees. But the other 75% comes from these local school bonds. So that's, I think, another important distinction for community members to know. It's just like, if you're waiting for the money to materialize somehow, it's just not going to. I mean, the state says, these are the rules by which you play. See Dublin 5 times, like, this is how you get these things. You pass local laws.
So our board did pass a resolution last month supporting the state that, I'm sorry, I don't remember what it was, but saying that that is a good thing for schools because of the dilapidated case of schools across the state. State schools are really struggling with their facilities. So yeah, we did have that resolution that we're saying, yeah, we support it.
Yep.
Hopefully.
So is there a action that you need to take?
It's after the presentation. So it's on your agenda.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Eisen?
No.
All right, John, thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, now 7.2 is second. Okay. Yeah, if you want to go. It's up to you.
Sure.
We have a lot of really interesting items.
Unless you want to stay, John.
ahead.
Well, I think I told Molly, but my wife's cousin is now a resident of your district.
Oh.
They were looking for a place. He works at the lab, and I said, "You'd really like Sunol. You'd really like it." And they found a place. They're thrilled with it. So,
Any school age kids?
well, He turns 1 this year, so he's even pretty far away from
All right.
TK.
There's a childcare director.
You take 1-year-olds?
No, be hydrate.
So I'm gonna go see them.
But tell them that then we'll happily take them on a tour.
Yeah,
They'll fall in love as always.
for sure. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Nice to see you. Thank you.
All right, 7.2 is the second interim report presented by Shailesh Rigby,
All
the
right.
County Office of Education.
Thank you for being here. It's so nice to see you in person.
Yes.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you, President Mike, Liz, Ryan, and special thank you to Molly and Sunol Glen team, and also appreciation to all the ACOE team member and our consultants that without whom putting this would have been very difficult. I'm here to report on the second interim, financials for the Sunol Glen, and just for the benefit of the group here, I just wanted to share that we have 2 reporting periods. First, that ended on October 31st for the fiscal year, and this is the second part of the interim period that starts on July 1st and ends on January 31st. There will be a final unaudited actual later when the year is ended, and that's more closer to September. This is also when we make some adjustments in our revenues and expected expenditures. And we also prepare a multi-year projections, which is the best snapshot of where we feel we are today based on the proposals from the governor that was presented on January 10th. And we also project our projected ending balance in our general fund. As far as our LCFF revenue, which is a primary part of our revenue sources, Sunol Glen receives about 2.9 million. When we break it down to the student group for TK to 3, that comes about 8,093. For grades 4 to 6, it's about 8,215, and then grade 7 and 8, it's about 8,458. On top of that, we also receive supplemental funding, and for the year 21-22, that is about $61,025. As far as ADA, which is our average daily attendance, like Molly mentioned, this year and the last year we have been flat funded at 279.06. That's the number for us. But unless there's any intervention on the state or a local level to stimulate some enrollment, I just wanted to report that there might be some decline in the revenue sources coming from attendance next year. I know that we're not the only one, but a lot of the school districts are experiencing declining enrollment, and with our current revenue structure, so much of that is tied to funding, and I just want to make sure that that is the forefront in our conversation with revenue, because LCFF local control funding formula, which is where we get a lot of our funding, is really tied to students in school, and I know there's different proposals that governor has proposed, and I'll touch on one of them later. But a lot of our school districts in California is definitely, especially with declining enrollments, this is a top concern for many of them on the revenue side of the things. Governor also proposed average. So usually when it comes to funding, it's current year or prior year, whichever is higher. But this year, for the first time, we did receive a proposal where they're looking into current year and prior 2 years average. So what that's going to do is that's going to help in terms of that cliff that we talk about, to just kind of narrow that cliff versus what it could be if we're just using the current year and the prior year. As far as federal revenue, which is also a source of our income, there's not much significant changes there. So later you'll probably see a graph and it'll probably make a little bit more sense. Sorry, there's a lot of wording there. As far as state revenues, a lot of these are budget numbers. There was a state revenue decrease of approximately 145,000. That's primarily due to difference in revenue recognition. So basically, when we get all these COVID dollars and stuff, some of them, they're like multi-year one-time funding. Some we receive 1 year, and then if there's leftover, we carry over to the following year. So it's just a budget adjustment depending because of the timing difference of the revenue recognition. As far as the local revenue, there was an increase of about 17,000, primarily because we closed one of our fund, that was Fund 15, that was our transportation school bus funding, as well as some reduction in our estimated preschool revenue from what we originally anticipated. As far as salary and benefits, we did some analysis in our position control, and through our analysis, we're able to adjust our budget, roughly about 2,000 on the salary side and about 34,000 in the benefit side. And majority of that benefit side primarily came from our original estimate of 1.23 for our unemployment insurance, which later became only 0.5, not 1.23. So we're able to see some reduction in our benefits. As far as books and supplies, which is another category that we see on our expenditure side, there was an increase of about 7.3, primarily due to the purchase of some devices. And then on the services and operating expenses, we saw a reduction primarily because we're aligning some of those budgeted amounts based on the current year spending. While we might anticipate sometimes, because these are like restricted dollars, we can't just spend them on anything. So we're just trying to closely align those spendings based on the budget, so that resulted in some reduction there. As far as the capital outlay, we didn't see any kind of material changes. Interfund transfer was the next item. Right now for this year, we're anticipating about $50,000 transfer from the unrestricted side of the house. We actually have unrestricted and restricted. So we usually unrestricted dollars are what we use to fund our operations. And this year we're anticipating about $50,000 to support our cafeteria funds. Just like any other year, these are the components on the next table where we take money from the unrestricted side of the house to support these programs. As you can see, we have the preschool program, health and wellness, special education, as well as ongoing routine repairs. Roughly all of those add up to be about $251,000 a year. And the next thing on the components of the projected fund balance, this kind of gives you a breakdown. The bottom line is the total projected ending balance that we're projecting at the end of the year. And then the one above is just a breakdown of how that looks like. So next page gives you a breakdown of what we talked about earlier, where we see the revenue side of 4.2 million coming in. We see the expenditures for a total of 4.1 million, giving us a net total of about 43,000. That's a difference. Some of that money under that 30,000 came from one of our fund that we closed, and 50,000 is that contribution to our cafeteria fund that I mentioned earlier, resulting in that ending balance of our projected ending balance of $1.1 million.
So just, Silas, I just want to pause there. So we have been trying to keep the board apprised of the universal free cafeteria program proposed by the governor. Is really a challenge for small districts. And it's a huge hit to our budget because they don't reimburse at anywhere near the rate that it costs us. And that's why we're seeing this huge upswing of having to use our LCFF dollars to help fund that program. But it's mandatory. We don't have a choice. It's an unfunded mandate.
Thank you, Molly. Moving on to the next page, it's our revenue summary page. This allows this is just an overview of, looking at our revenue as a whole and looking at how much of that comes from our LCFF side, how much of that is federal revenue, how much is state, and how much is coming from the local revenue. So that's just a breakdown to report. The next one is our expenditure summary, the similar thing, but it kind of breaks the amount based on certificated salaries, classified, the benefits, books and supplies, as well as the service and other operating expenses, as well as capital outlay. The total personal expenses is very, it's roughly about 80-ish. So right now it's at 79%. So that's very aligned with, historical rates. Next, we have the revenue source comparison. So much nicer in the screen than here, which is black and white. So, but as you can see, there's no significant changes in there apart from that revenue on the state revenue side that was projected a little bit higher during first interim, which has been adjusted on our budget side for the second interim. Now moving on to the expenditure comparison, next page, very similar trend there as well. Nothing significant there to report. And then the next page is what we already kind of touched about earlier, but what we do is we start with adopted budget, look at first and second interim, and then look at what has changed number-wise and why those changes are happening. So that's just a summary of some of those highlights that I shared earlier. And then our most important page, our multi-year projection. I do want to share with the board that this is a snapshot in time. There's just the assumptions we make to come up with these numbers. And this is our best shot of what we know as of today. Well, it's already late because these reports are due a few days earlier. So I'm sure things have already changed since then. but I wanted to report some highlights. The first one is the COLA growth. The state does anticipate COLA to move from 5.07 current year to 5.33 in the year 22-23, as well as 3.61 in year 23-24. As far as the revenue side, what I wanted to report was primarily on the federal and state revenue side, where you'll see a decline on those revenues come next year because some of those one-time fundings are going to be used up. Because it's not an ongoing spending, we anticipate those funds to be reduced in future years. As far as the expenditure side, you also notice that we will have a reduction on the because of some ESSER funds that we're currently using. We'll also see a reduction on the expenditure side because of, we'll have less because we're getting less, we're gonna spend less, so reducing some of our expenditure side as well. Some of the funds that we're currently using, the ESSER funds, we're using those funds for extra custodian duties, as well as tech using the ESSER funds, which will end in the year 22-23. And on the bottom, just wanted to share the trend of ending balance going from 1.1 million going to 1.112 to 1.036. So while it's slow, just wanted to kind of make sure that the group is aware of the ending balance, slowly declining, but there's just a lot of factors there. So much of some of the things that could change that is if we have higher COLA. Some of that could change would be if we have a higher ADA. So, enrollment continues to be a priority for us to ensure that, our funding continues to grow. Next page, we have just a breakdown of our preschool, what we anticipated and what we anticipate the general fund to contribute. So on the right side for our preschool, it's currently anticipated that, 86,000 would be contributed from the general fund to support that. The next
Just
few
pause right there too. So the goal of our preschool and our Eagles Nest program is to be self-funding. Our hope is that it doesn't encroach. Because of COVID and everything that we do consider this year kind of a build back year. So it is a huge encroachment on the general fund. But the goal is that with the rebuilding, and I know our director's here, she's worked really hard going to fairs, putting the word out, doing recruitment. Trying to get that enrollment up as well. She meets regularly, Teresa, and I know they were talking about restructuring the cost to parent, the tuition costs, and looking at what other districts are so we can be competitive to try to make sure that there is not an encroachment, because that's the goal, is for it to be self-funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. So the next two pages kind of cover all the different funds other than the general funds that we have, starting with our cafeteria fund, deferred maintenance fund, Fund 15 that we recently closed, as well as our Fund 17, which is our special reserve fund other than capital outlay, which is kind of like our savings account. Then we have our capital facility funds, as well as our capital project funds. But in the interest of time, I just want to share the summary sheet that I started that just basically walks the board starting with what our beginning balance is, the revenue that comes into those funds, as well as the expenditures that leaves that fund, and the ending balance. Just wanted to note that for the cafeteria fund, while we are anticipating an ending fund balance, we anticipate not having any ending balance, because depending upon how much we need, like I mentioned earlier, that we are anticipating about 50,000, we may not need all 50,000. So whatever is left over, it'll just stay in the general fund. So because we're talking about budget numbers, that's our current plan, but we're hoping that it's going to be less than 50,000 that we would need by the end of the year. Final page, looking forward, just have some thoughts for the board. We mentioned the ADA cliff, and like Governor did propose a solution. We have a 3-year rolling average. I was doing a very quick calculation with our current ADA of 265.92, which is what we projected. If we go with the governor one, where he's going to allow us to use the current year as well as the previous 2 years, we're going to be sitting at 269, which is higher than what our current allowed ADA calculation is. So that's going to be a plus for us if that option is offered to school districts. We'll know more about that in the May revise, and I'll share with the board. As far as Prop 98, there's also big three taxes that are up, which is always a plus for school districts. The more the state makes, and we make about 39 cents to a dollar, so it's always good. On the stars and purse side, I just wanted to share with the board that one-time cost relief was for 2020-21 as well as 21-22. The rates were supplanted where the stars rate was 16.92 versus the 19.10. And then the purse rate was 22.91 instead of the 26.19. Those provisions are going away next year. So that's just that's another big expenditure item for us to, to consider. But CalPERS recently did come up with revised, estimates due to investment gains and decrease in the cost of new hires. So they're projecting the next year's rate to be 25.40 versus 26.10. Which I thought was really great. And in the future years, they do show that, those rates are going to drop. While it's not going to have a significant difference for us, I think it's a positive news for us on the per side, classified side of the house. And then some closing thoughts, declining enrollment. We talked about that already. So monitoring our enrollment and UPP count, which is our unduplicated pupil count, continues to be a priority for us. No planned schedule for upcoming year. And this is just a celebration that, I know that Molly and the team and all of us, we've been so busy with ESSER plan, this plan, that plan. And I think that next year it's going to be nice to just not have a plan. So just wanted to share that.
I had not heard that. That is, it has been crazy with all of the different grants. It's fabulous. But every single one, instead of saying, use a global vision, which is in my humble opinion, is serving your students better. Like this is how we're serving students, and then we're going to access these funds in this way with the same plan. Every grant had its own plan that had to be created, and it was a lot. So that's very welcome news.
Thank you.
It was a lot.
And then just thank you to everybody. It was a lot. Multi-year ramp up in universal transitional kindergarten. I know that this is not a new topic, but I'm sure that's going to be a topic that we're all going to be involved with. Like Molly mentioned earlier, universal meals starting next year. This was directly from, I think, through Teresa, 35 to 40 students lunches a day to 125 to 145 students lunch a day. It was about 3.6 times what we are used to. No wonder we're spending more money in our, cafeteria account. And it's the right thing to do, but I'm just, we need more revenue to supplement that.
Well, and I don't even know if all this was taken into account. This has also impacted the level of garbage on count. The garbage cans are overflowing and the amount of waste is heartbreaking to see. The unintended consequences of all this. So we've had to increase just the number of times our garbage, custodial support. It's too much serving 30 kids versus 130 kids. More staff has to be out there serving. So again, it was a beautiful vision. I don't think anybody would question it. Just not well thought out about the logistics, and especially for small districts. Bigger districts run a cafeteria program, so they just ramped up with what they already have. They have the equipment, they have the people, everything. And so it's an issue.
And then thank you, Molly. And then my final thought is just we'll continue to do conservative budgeting and COLA projections for future, budget models that we come up with. So just, that concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions and report back to the board.
No.
Okay,
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Very thorough. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, a lot of work. We appreciate all your oversight
Thank you,
and working
Molly.
with the staff and then coming and sharing to the board. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
We appreciate you, Carol.
Thank you. And 7.3 is our enrollment report.
I'm thrilled to pronounce, or Shailesh, 271.
Yeah, I know.
We're moving. We're trying. It's going in the right. Last year it was like down. So it's been really nice to see some increase. I appreciate trying to recruit John's nephew, 1-year-old nephew. Recruiting everywhere we get another little 1-year-old in here. But anyway, it's moving in the right direction at least. So that's great.
It's not a fifth grade.
Yeah, that is so true.
All right, 7.4 Superintendents Report.
Okay, so just a few things to share with everybody. As you know, COVID-19 updates, it's been a fast moving trajectory as it has been over the past 2 years. It's just a fluid situation. And the county does a great job. They hold weekly meetings with our staff from all the districts, and they keep us apprised of what's going on. February 28th, Governor Newsom announced the requirement for indoor masking for schools to be changed from required to the language of strongly recommended. And that the last day of that would be March 11th. So it's Friday, starting on March 14th. And then what schools are always beholden to, not just the state, but they have to wait for their own particular county and as well as Cal OSHA. Both the county, so that was February 28th from the governor. The county, Alameda County Public Health Department and Cal OSHA, I think within that was February 28th, a few days later, they then came out and were supporting this change as well. So that helps, that means that's it for schools and we are good to go. So that will be what we are going to do. We're going to, as we've always done throughout the pandemic, Sunol Glen has followed the state guidelines. We also had a kindergarten roundup, and I do want to point out this gorgeous banner that was made by our very own Morgan Mitchell, our art teacher. And as some of you may remember, when you had your kindergartners come, one of my favorite things about kindergarten roundup is I get to read a story to the kindergartners. It was virtual because we're still we're kind of not allowing too many people on campus at that time. So it was the second year of a virtual roundup. So we had to look at them on the Zoom, but I got to read a story, and it was just nice to have this beautiful backdrop, and we're going to keep it up because it's so cute. And it was a really cute story talking about belonging, and no matter what you look like, you belong to everybody. So that was really fun. And a teacher workday was Friday, March 4th. This is in preparation for the upcoming at-risk conferences, which are this Friday, March 11th. It's a minimum day, so students will be dismissed at 12 and the teachers will be conferencing with their parents. March is a literature month, and so I have some awesome pictures to show you. I didn't get all of them, but our doors are decorated in line with literature month. And this year, the theme was to find something connected to social emotional learning and have books that go along with it. So this particular one has every problem has an opportunity for something good. You just have to look for it. And they had the teacher have different problems, and kids then could chime in what they thought was potential solutions. That's really cute. Sometimes you just have to be a little bit brave. Love that quote. And then there's pictures that the kids drew. This is a kindergarten, first grade class. You can probably guess who that is. That's Miss Chipridge. I can be a rainbow friend. And the rainbow fish, fabulous story. And I don't know if you can see, but if you can peek, those fish, actually there's writing underneath. So the kids then wrote about their experience. So really cute. Oh, I see that somebody helped somebody that fell down. This is actually, I know we're not supposed to have, they're all my favorites, but this one's a favorite. This is from The Outsiders. It's our 7th grade. And she had each child do, I don't know if you can tell, those are panels. So they were assigned a panel, each of those squares, and then it came together, and it has a wonderful quote of nature's first green is gold, her heart is huge to hold. And then down below, it's The Outsiders. And you still have a lot of time to make yourself be what you want. There's still a lot of good in the world. Maybe the two different worlds we lived in weren't so different. We saw the same sunset. I love that. That's unifying. It's, you might have a different opinion about something, but we're all in the same mindset. So I love that quote. And this is 8th grade. I think this is super cute too. Another favorite. It's an elephant. I think the top of it says elephant, or the signage says elephants don't belong, or
Strictly no elephants.
strictly no elephants. How mean is that? But then the elephant is included and all the animals are loving on the elephant. Is that the cutest thing? That's our 8th grade. Love it. I love the floating penguin. That's so fun. So I think that's it. So super cute. Just a couple quotes. You've a good book when you turn the last page and feel like a little like you've lost the trail at the end of that book. I feel that way all the time when I read a good book. That's by Paul Sweeney. Another good quote about reading. Reading is important because if you can read, you can learn anything about everything. And you can learn everything about anything, by Tommy DeFallo. We kicked off with a virtual assembly where I got to read to the kids again, a book about you to the TK through 4th grade classes. The SEL social emotional learning themed door decorations around the school are just fantastic to see. And it's been fun to see the teachers putting those up. And super excited, we're having an in-person book fair for the first time in 2 years. We went back and forth about it. We're like, let's do it. So I'm super, because it's just the kids, when they get to shop and actually see the books, it's so different than online. It's hard to get excited about, a picture of a book. So really excited. And that's going to be March 14th through 18th right in here. And this is another really super fun thing for kids, a big test. Yay! The Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium, it has been canceled for the last 2 years. Yay, it's back in session. That will be May 9th through May 27th. And 6th grade was the first out the gate with the first interim that they took today. Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Sure, it went fabuloso. And the purpose of interims is we want the kids to be familiar with the way the test feels, be familiar with the kind of test questions that are put to face, all of it, because we don't want kids to feel anxious at all. We want them to lower the anxiety and just let them feel comfortable that this is part of life. And we're going to have you guys take this test, which will be coming later in the spring. They did a training for teachers led by our very own Cammie Clark. She did a fabulous job, and that was on March 2nd. Character education. I love the March character trait is resilience. It's a good one. And I already talked about that. Okay, that is my report. Lots of positive things going on. Yeah.
A quick question about the mask mandate thing. Do you have any thoughts on when the parents are going to be the volunteers allowed back in?
Yeah, so I have been talking to the teachers about that, and our whole thought on a lot of this has sort of been a slow roll. And I think we've been very successful at that. And as things lift, then other things lift. Like there's a domino thing, like the book fair. Like, okay, no, we don't want to do it. Okay, now this is where things are. The virus, the information about the pandemic and the virus is changing. I think we can handle this with still limited volunteer staffing. Okay, now masks are coming on. It looks like we might be able to revisit the whole allowing volunteers to come on. We've been really reluctant to allow other organizations to use our facility, almost predicated on we're not even letting our volunteers come on and they belong here. Not that other organizations don't belong here, but community club, even we've asked them to kind of meet offsite and everything. But we're looking at just as things are opening back up, it's time to slowly ease into that too. So specifically, we love hosting for the 4-H pancake breakfast, which I think we haven't had that here for 2 years. It's been in the parking lot, right? Yeah. And so, we were thinking like, well, maybe this is the year to let that happen. And that's right around, that's April, right? Is it? It's
I hope so.
Yeah, I think that's coming up. So it's
slowly.
on the conversation because our teachers are missing their volunteers. So yeah, for sure.
Okay,
It's on the list too. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, 7.5 facilities maintenance report. Doc?
Start off with just the usual going on. Just leaves the weeds, we're still doing what we. So, which fascinates me because it hasn't rained enough that the weeds still in the ground. Yeah. Something new this last week, we had an actual on-site assembly and I actually had to set up chairs and take them down. I haven't had to do that in 2 years, so little things like that. The wall I mentioned before in the cafeteria, we fire department said we had to go to DSA. Well, we got an architect, he looked into it and he said, no, we are exempt. We do not have to go to DSA. So he gave me all the paperwork and a letter saying that we do not have to process that with DSA. So we're good there. Thanks to Mr. Picard and the use of his man lift. The solar light in the parking lot hopefully is working. It was working the other night, which is lighting up that corner again. I don't know if anybody's ever been by at night, but it gets real dark down there. We've actually had people spending the night down there and all sorts of stuff going on. So with that light down there, hopefully that will eliminate some of that going on. The marquee, we had our old program had malware in it. We got a new program, but we had to get some parts and we got the marquee working and it has a lot more bells and whistles, I'll call them. And we can actually tone the brightness down, so hopefully the complaints will not. Right now, we have it dimming at 6 p.m. and brightening back up at 6 a.m. So we'll see how that goes. And we can adjust that as time goes on, if we get any more progress. Along with the wall, the fire department mentioned, and the health department was a hood over the oven and stove. And the architect is working on that. So hopefully that will get resolved here pretty soon. The health department wrote us up for the dishwasher because it wasn't working. And if you have a dishwasher in the cafeteria, it has to be working. We finally got a company out here. They've been working on it. He got a brand new part, installed it the other day. And for some reason, it kept popping the fuses. So he thinks it's bad. So he ordered a new part. So hopefully, but at least it's in the progress. We can get that signed off with the health department. Something I've noticed, we're starting to get a lot of little leaks, O-rings and seals and stuff in the bathroom fixtures and sinks. I think it's just been everything wasn't used for 2 years, and now all of a sudden
Calcified.
more use, and we're starting to have to fix a few of those things coming up. Wiring on the irrigation grant that we got. What, 5 years ago that we did this, I think, at least 5 years ago, 6 years ago. We finally got the wiring completed. We're getting reports now from the system. So hopefully we can get that to San Francisco water and we'll get that closed off. Because there's still about $35,000 that San Francisco hasn't given us, that we got to give the contractor for getting that completed. But they need some reports before they'll sign off on it. Hopefully with this new wiring they put in, it should do it. So that's looking up. Working with waste.org. AB 1857 says that we have to recycle and compost all this trash and everything. Trouble is, we're limited to Pleasanton Garbage here in Sunol for our pickup service, and their composting does not take any compostable plastics. Well, our lunch supplies and everything, all of it is compostable, but it's plastic and they can't take it. So, but this is something that was supposed to go into effect in January. They're working on it. Right now, I'm kind of, and everybody's kind of figuring out how we're supposed to implement it. Because technically we should have like 3 different containers every time somebody throws something away. Food's supposed to go here, paper's for, regular garbage to the dump and organics, and it's a real nightmare. And trying to figure out how we're supposed to implement this. And StopWaste.org is a county organization. They're supposed to be implementing it. They police it. They actually have. We've been inspected a couple of times by a cop that comes out and looks in your garbage. But right now, they're not even coming out to make site visits to tell you what to do. So we're just kind of playing it by ear, and we'll see what happens on that. In the meantime, I'm just trying to get all the information I can to try and figure out what we're going to end up doing with that. And I don't know, that's all I have.
Thank you,
Well,
Ms. Coffey.
well, it looks beautiful, as always.
It's always.
All right, 7.6 technology report.
I'd like to report to the board that we did purchase 20 extra Chromebooks. We've received them. Thank you to Molly for approving it. We did receive those Chromebooks at a really good discount rate. Generally, for 1 unit, it goes around $250 to $275. We were able to get it at $145. So it was really good cost savings and just preparation for next year, especially since our enrollment numbers are looking good in February. So we're ready for any increase in enrollment. But besides that, just wanted to reiterate, we did fix the marquee sign. We had the part shipped in from China, and we installed the new software. The old software was end of life, and it had an identified packet that could be malicious and used as a vector to get into our network. What our software did was it notified me saying, "Hey, this is a really potential bad packet. I'm uninstalling this. Not even going to let this, be a security issue for you."
So that's what notified me of being at EOL. Then we worked with the company to get the new hardware. But besides that, from my end, I've been getting the computer lab ready for interim testings and CAS. We just wrapped up Hall 2 for the state, which we report our courses and staff data to the state. And did general maintenance for the network and looking at ways to further better the network experience. Ms. Clark did have a presentation she wanted me to share with the board. Just really quickly to go over this presentation. ARES Parent Portal updates. ARES Parent Portal transcripts may not be emailed. Official transcripts may be requested from the office to be mailed or pick up only. Unofficial transcripts can be printed directly from the parent portal. So if you need an unofficial transcript for, let's say, high school or anything else, you can go to your parent portal. Again, CAS report cards may not be emailed. And other documents or resources are always available on the parent portal. For example, the policies, handbook, and district forms. And if any parents ever need help with anything with the parent portal, you guys can always email us at support@sunol.k12.ca.us, and either one of us will respond very promptly to that. In terms of data confirmation is ongoing. We have about 43% complete, still waiting on 143 to confirm their data. And new student enrollment is ongoing. It's currently open. If you have a new student or sibling to enroll, please contact Cindy Grant at cgrant@sunol.k12.ca.us. Moving on, try 2 and try 3 report card windows are listed here. Try 1 grade reporting period is 11 through November 8th to March 3rd, and upcoming is the report card period, which is March 11th. And try 3 grading report period is March 7th to June 6th, and the following line items are listed. And to touch on it again, CAS is ongoing right now. We're currently doing interim testing. Thank you to Mr. Wheeler for being the first ones on. I hope it was an enjoyable experience in the computer lab today.
It was smooth.
So we're going to continue on with interim testing through March 7th to April 22nd. Summary of testing will begin. The window begins in April 25th to May 27th. Teachers have signed and done their training. And finally, upcoming dates listed here for important dates for our department. And finally, this is our website. You can always find us on the school's website. And any questions? And that's about it. Any questions for me that I can answer for the board?
Any questions? All right, thank you, Sean.
He is neglecting one of his most important jobs, really critical. DJ Gabel in the house. I do want to thank, Nikki and I were talking over the summer, and it's just been so hard these last 2 years. And then we do this different way of dropping kids off. And so we were like, wouldn't it be fun if we just had music blasting and the kids get out of the cars and we all, we could all dance and say, it's Friday. We call it Friday, Custom Fridays. And so he's so kind that he was voluntold. He didn't turn down his voluntold. And I hope you're having fun with it, but you do great. I mean, he does variety, he does thematic with what's going on in the school or calendar wise. And we just have a blast out there. And I know the kids are just totally mortified. I'm like, let's go. But That's okay. I think deep down they like, I tell myself deep down they like it, especially my eighth graders. They're loving it. They're loving it. Yeah. Shout out to Louders though, because Mama Louder will rock it out in the truck and she instructs her kids to get out and rock it out. And they actually do. They actually do. And I appreciate that. Oh, I died. She's rocking in the truck. And sometimes my parents in the corner, that sounds bad. Parents on the side, parents in the corner. My parents rock out too, and I really appreciate it. It's super fun. It just adds joy. And then one time we missed or something, and I heard about it. The kids were like, "Why wasn't there music?" So, like I said, they act sour, but I know deep down they're joyful. So, anyway, thank you, Sean. Though it's something.
Thank you.
That's other duties as assigned. We really appreciate that. It's just been joyful. It's something to really look forward to. So thank you.
All right, 7.7 Community Club Report.
Yes, we're going, so we're starting off with Kindness Week. There was one leftover item that we were trying to finish up. We have received the vinyls that will go up in the bathroom stalls. We haven't put them up yet because it takes a little bit of coordination. So Annie's gonna go ahead and put those up, but we received 12 rectangular vinyls that will go up on the stalls for the kids to continually think about kindness. They all have kindness sayings on them. For the staff workday last Friday, Community Club provided lunch for our teachers from Mr. Pickles, for anyone who was on site. So I hope you enjoyed it. Literacy Month, we are, as Mrs. Barnes mentioned, going to hold an in-person book fair right here in the library. So we're excited that that can happen from March 14th to 18th. We will also have an online version for those who would prefer to do that, and that will be running concurrently and end at the end of March. So with the in-person fair, each classroom will be able to come into the library and preview during their class time. And we're only doing sales during lunchtime only because we're not yet allowed to have volunteers or even parents to come on. Usually the parents would come into the library, into the book fair to help their kids purchase. But this time it's only during lunch, but there is an option if parents don't want to send cash of an e-wallet through Scholastic. So parents can load up an e-wallet and the kids can spend their money, and anything that's left over goes to they can purchase online books. So we'll advertise that a little bit more in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, we're excited the kids can actually go in and buy books and read. Prior to that, this coming Friday, we are having a bingo for books down at the Sunol Community Park because it's a half day, so all students are dismissed at noon. There's complimentary pizza being provided by Community Club, and the Sunol Wood-Fired Oven Society is going to be baking fresh pizzas. Similar to what we did at Steam Night, so we have a few parents who are going to prepare those. Dan Ricard will be he loved that joke last time. And then everyone will be able to eat that for lunch, and we'll play bingo, a few games that Patricia Torres will lead up, and any winners will get a coupon that they can then bring to the following week, which is the book fair, and turn in for a free book. So that's why it's bingo for books. Last couple of things, Earth Week, Earth Day in April. We're still processing thoughts on how to celebrate or observe Earth Day, Earth Week. And we also have Staff Appreciation Week, which is coming up in May. So we're starting to figure out how to celebrate our fabulous staff. And one other note, we did talk about it at our last meeting, spring fling and auction, we are going to put on hold. Unfortunately, we don't think we can manage that with everything that's going on. So.
That's my only social life in the year.
Next year.
Sadly true.
2023, we'll be back. We'll do a big.
Hold me to that, Carol. Let the minutes reflect. Don't put that, what I said in the minutes. It's sad. It's sad and true. That's the truth.
So that's our report for now.
Spring, the whole spring flings are awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry to hear about spring fling. 7.8 Tri Valley Selpa report.
Nothing to report. They are having their next board meeting on, I believe, March 14th. So we'll have something to report next time.
All right, 7.9, Alameda County School Boards Association. report.
Nothing to report out.
And 7.10, Board Policy Committee report.
So did you get those board policies back from the state? Oh. They are on their way and it will be in the next month's agenda.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, number 8 is community, comments from the community. We do have a sheet filled out, Chris Boberts for number 8.
Well, I don't know, I just wanted to be prepared.
Okay.
You know, I tell people, fill it out and it's better to fill it out. Not
Yeah,
use it.
right.
Yeah, I think that was very wise.
Okay, great. Okay, any other comments from the community? Okay, great. Number 9, items for report, discussion of possible action. 9.1 is report, discussion of possible action to investigate the feasibility and actions required to extend the existing bond for purposes of restoring and updating the original school building.
So this is where I need, so he gave a presentation. You can see the timeline there. It looks like the first step is just more of a survey. So it's up to the board, of course. You could even just say that you want to go forward with that step, which then he would have to come back and report, and then that gives you another data point of information. It's absolutely up to the board what you could either, you've heard everything, you could say thank you, but no thank you, or you could decide we are interested in pursuing more information. It's up to the 3 of you.
My comment is super disappointing that we didn't pass the last bond because our facility is in definite need of repairs. It would have been great if we had been able to build us a multi-purpose room. The feedback we got from the community at that time was we would have supported just doing repairs on the school, but we don't support a multi-purpose building. We don't need it. It's too extravagant. That's their opinion. I disagree, but we have to listen to our constituents. Personally, I've been thinking we had a lot more time than this November, which is really coming up fast. However, I do think it's super important that we at least look at this and at least get him to conduct a survey just to see if it's something that's feasible to do. I mean, frankly, he said, and I agree, all the costs are going up, construction costs, labor costs. The longer we wait, the more problems we're going to have being able to repair the main building. So that would be my recommendation, is to go forward with at least conducting the survey and see what happens with that.
Yeah, and the time frame seems feasible.
And I mean, my comment is we definitely need a bond, and even if it's just to extend the current bond once it expires. What do we do for that? Even at least just to keep.
Same process.
Okay, so definitely.
Okay, so I think we can directly go and have.
You need to make a motion for that?
Make a motion that you're directing staff to.
I make a motion that we direct the staff to move forward with this timeline and next survey.
I'll second. Any other discussion? Besides what we already discussed? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
I do appreciate the board's support. I know it was really disheartening last time, especially when you see how many other districts successfully passed theirs and ours didn't pass by like 10 votes. And the costs of everything have gone up quite a bit since then. And now that we know that there's a potential for the state to have funds for matching. So if, I forget what he said, if it's like 9 million that you could possibly get and match with that, 9 million from the state versus nothing, matches with nothing. That would be disappointing to not lose out on $9 million that could go towards the students of the school. But that's, it's up to the board, of course.
Yeah, even without matching funds, I think just see if we would get 8, 9, 10 million. We can do so much to repair the school, our handicap access, ADA, bathrooms and all that. So,
Wonderful.
yeah. So, anyway, okay, great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
9.2 is report discussion of possible action to approve the 2021-2022 second interim report presented by Shailesh Regmi, Alameda County Office of Education.
I move to approve.
A second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. 9.3 is report discussion and possible action to approve the MOU between Sunol Glen, California School Employees Association, CSEA, Sunol Chapter 862, and Sunol Glen Unified School District, recognizing Juneteenth National Independence Day as a paid holiday for CSEA classified employees. I move to approve.
I second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. 9.4, report discussion of possible action to sunshine the initial bargaining proposal for 2021-2022 with the Sunol Glen, California School Employees Association, CSEA, Sunol Chapter 862, and the Sunol Glen Unified School District.
I move to approve.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. 9.5. Report discussion and possible action to amend resolution number 21-2022-13, adoption of school-sponsored travel guidelines during COVID-19. And should I go and read the amended? Can we go and read the amended or proposed amendment to the resolution? Amendment resolution 21-2022-13, adoption of school-sponsored travel guidelines during COVID-19. Whereas the Sunol Glen Unified School District Board of Trustees recognizes that school-sponsored trips are an important component that can supplement and enrich the learning experience. Learning opportunities happen both on and off school sites, and we value all these learning opportunities and the experiences they provide for our students. And whereas the past 24 months during the COVID-19 pandemic has severely impacted these types of enrichment opportunities due to local, state, and federal safety protocols. And whereas the Sunol Glen Unified School District must establish COVID-19 safety protocols for the 2021-2022 school year. And now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Sunol Glen Unified School District Board support the following travel guidelines. All chaperones must be fully vaccinated and have provided a negative result of a COVID test taken no more than 48 hours prior to arrival, or prior to travel, excuse me. All eligible students must provide a negative result of a COVID test taken no more than 48 hours prior to travel. Within the week following an overnight trip, all participants must take one COVID test within 3 days prior to the return to campus. All participants will be assigned to cabins per vaccination status so that vaccinated students will be grouped together and unvaccinated students will be grouped together. All participants must follow the COVID-19 mitigation plans for Sunol Glen Unified School District and the local safety plans of the host city, county, etc. And be it further resolved that the board does hereby declare that schools may participate in 6th through 8th grade science camp following all of the rules that have been outlined above. And be it further resolved that the superintendent provides copies of this resolution along with the appropriate attachments to interested staff, parents and guardians, and community members in the Sunol Glen School District. So
I move to approve.
Discussion.
after we second, if it's second.
I second.
All right, and discussion.
So just to give a little bit of background to the original resolution, so the school district unfortunately had to cancel the science camp in 2020, yeah. When the pandemic, and so for those 6th graders, and then the following year, we still were not able to offer for class 6th graders in 2021. So here we are in year 3. And for our 8th grade students, this would be potentially the last time that they could participate. So I did gather with our teachers of the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers in the fall. And we talked about, gosh, would there be any way that we could do instead of being sixth grade science camp, it'll be sixth, seventh, and eighth grade science camp to give all of those students that missed out in their seventh and eighth grade a possibility of being able to go. And the teachers were awesome. The teachers were like, yeah, that sounds fair. We really want our kids to be able to have that regardless of it, even though it's called sixth grade science camp. We usually consider it. And so that was kind of the history of that. Then it came about right in where there was that sort of wave of the Delta variant and the Omicron. So going to those county meetings, so all the districts were like, we need to really do something about nighttime field trips because, well, and mostly we weren't doing field trips, we weren't doing assemblies. Lowell said he finally set up for our first assembly in forever. And again, mostly thinking about those eighth graders, it just seemed like, is there any way that, and thinking about that what happens is in an overnight field trip, you're in a room together with other kids and you have your masks off. And in this time, masks were still mandatory. And so the resolution that was proposed and passed in December was in recognition of where we were with the Delta variant, the Omicron. We were having anywhere from a third to a half of our school absent every day in the month of January, including staff members, huge staff absences as well. So that was that sort of snapshot of time. Then here we are 2 months later, the numbers of hospitalization and cases have dropped significantly. Alameda County was doing really, really well, as is other places also. And the governor, as I presented on February 28th, the governor said we can renew the pass on March 14th. So again, it's that sort of reopening, getting back to life as we know it. And given all of that information, that was sort of the impetus to re-looking at a resolution that was created in a different time, even though it was in COVID, things happened so fast. It was only 2 months ago on one hand, but a lot has happened in just 2 months. And so that is staff's recommendation is, and just to reassure the board, I did meet with our teachers and this is the outcome of all of that. So is to present to the board an amendment, which would then open it up to both groups of kids.
That's great.
Is there no opportunity for public
Oh,
comment on that?
You have to fill out a form.
I did.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We're in the discussion part right now. So I'm gonna, after the board is discussed, we're gonna open it up to the public. I shuffled these up, so in no particular order. We're gonna start with Chanel Bergman.
You gotta go first.
As far as what I'm supposed to speak on, I mean, this is obviously an amended resolution from what the situation was even just a few days ago. I think that this is moving in a good direction. For me, I mean, I still feel that, I mean, the mask mandate has been lifted and testing, I feel, is a very good, reliable way of being able to determine the safety of others. The separate cabins, I mean, if that's how it's got to be, obviously we take it. I just feel like it's just moving to segregation to a point. And I just don't know. I mean, they're allowed on the bus, they're allowed in the classrooms, but they can't, participate now. They can participate, but now they're being segregated into another cabin. So I mean, it is what it is as far as the amendment goes. I don't know necessarily that I agree with the segregation. So I feel that testing, being able to test at, and I think I mentioned this in my email, and then obviously even test in the parking lot prior to departure, can give a good snapshot, because the vaccinated people can be just carrying just as easily as an unvaccinated person. So if it's coming down to making sure everybody is clear prior to disembark, before embarking to camp, I think that's a better option than segregating your students.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Sean, are you running a timer?
Yes.
Okay, just remind everybody, 3-minute timer. You made it, no problem. And we're not allowed to comment. And it is being recorded, just to remind everybody. Okay, next person is Kelly.
Okay. I'm glad it was amended so that all children can go, because testing is a valid option for this. As far as adult volunteers, the CYO doesn't require it, nor does the state anymore. They're going to update their policies and test everybody when they first get there. And it is not a policy of the staff either. So I don't feel that it should be that parents can't volunteer if they're not vaccinated. Same thing with segregation. I don't think it's right to segregate children. I think that sends bad precedents for children to think you are maybe less than somebody else for not vaccinating when both parties can. I do understand there's a lot that's been pushed on kids and the general public. So I understand that there's like more to feelings of what people are doing, but I think testing will suffice. The numbers are coming down, and I just think for my kids, I just want them to know that I'll stand behind it. I don't want them separated from each other.
And Stephanie Hinderer.
Hi there. I'm just gonna stand up. Speak. Thank you, board, for entertaining the comments. Thanks, teachers and parents, for being here to listen. I appreciate the amendment. Prior to this, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade being able to participate this year is huge, and we appreciate that. Prior to the amendment, my 6th grader wouldn't have been able to participate, then missing it next year. So I really do appreciate that. And whatever logistics need to happen to make that happen, I think it's an all-in situation. If we have the separate cabins, you know, even if that's a cabin with unvaccinated kids and or vaccinated kids who are willing to be around unvaccinated kids, so there's an even number, and they don't even need to know that it's a separate situation. I do understand and agree that we don't want segregation or anyone to feel left out, whether they're vaccinated or not. I also agree with, I don't think it's necessary for chaperones to necessarily have to be vaccinated to participate. I work in public safety. I'm a firefighter. Front lines, seeing, you know, the fact that you could still get COVID even though you are vaccinated, and get very sick even though you are vaccinated. And not. Some people are unvaccinated and have COVID and don't even know it. We test every single day at work. But I appreciate the support of the teachers, because I know you guys are going to be there with our kids and in the cabins with our kids. And I know sleeping's a different scenario, right? Kids, obviously, for safety concerns, people aren't going to be sleeping with a mask on. So for a lot of people, this is ever changing and also very scary. So we want to make everyone feel safe and comfortable, and moving forward also with the new regulations dropping and the potential for mandation of this. I hope that we can stay flexible with that, because there's also some very personal, on both ends, personal reasons as to why my son specifically hasn't been vaccinated, and not yet. It's just a personal family decision for us, for him specifically, because of medical issues, and everybody has a story, right? As to why they're extra cautious on both ends. Mr. Wheeler, I have two sons that are 6th and 5th graders, and they cannot wait to be students of Mr. Wheeler's and to go to science camp with Mr. Wheeler. So this is a huge deal. Huge deal. And my 4-year-old is gonna be joining Sunol soon too. So thank you. Great. We love it. My boys can't. All 3 of my boys can't wait to be students of Mr. Wheeler's.
That is true. That's like
Yeah.
a rite of passage.
Yeah.
We have James Louder.
I'd first like to thank the board. I know it's not an easy position to be in, and it definitely doesn't, it's to remind, the board is a volunteer position. They're not here making any money, and I appreciate you guys, even though regardless of how you decide this today, whether I agree or disagree, I'd like to recognize the work that you guys do, and thank you for volunteering in the community. We very much appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I also recognize this is an extremely polarizing issue. Nobody is going to leave here tonight or in the community happy with 100% happy. I while I'm glad that we are opening it up to people and other students that are unable. As I spoke in the January meeting, I did not agree with the original one as I spoke in the January meeting, and I don't believe this goes far enough. And I understand, and I personally have had people that have passed away due to complications from COVID. I understand how horrible and debilitating it is. But it is hard for me to explain to my child that, hey, there will be kids in a separate room because they're unvaccinated, but it is completely okay for them to be in a classroom next week, no masks, no anything, on the playground, in the car, in the bus ride to there, but at night, all of a sudden, COVID gets dangerous and you can't be in the same room. That doesn't make sense to me. And I'm all for, following the science, but I believe that we have to follow the science. And I understand that it creates issues. And one of the things that stuck out to me when I was looking to be appointed to the school board in January was, it is about making the best decisions for the kids, not the teachers, not the administration, not openly, not the public, but what is the best decision for the kids? And in this situation, I don't know how I can explain to my child that, oh, there's political reasons that you have to be in a separate cabin or other kids will be in a separate cabin. Follow the science. If COVID's dangerous and they can't be, then what is putting them in a separate room going to do when classrooms, bus rides, everything, they're all together?
Chris Boberts.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like for me to hear other people's, am I allowed to like, I don't know what I'm allowed to.
You're
I want to get public kicked out.
I'm very kind.
I was
You're
never-
allowed to
I was never
comment.
a good kid in school, so.
Following the rules.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like hearing what other people are saying and where they're coming from and like, and agreeing with a lot of what they're saying, and then also like disagreeing with some of it, like just from, personal background, whatever, my opinion. It's just, yeah, it's really, I guess, interesting to see where people come from. And so where like, frankly, like, I may disagree that like, you know what, I understand that it's hard to tell your kid, but like, as a parent, tell your kid, right? Like, just respect. Right?
But what am I?
Yeah, no, I know.
No,
Like, it's
you
hard to be a
can't
parent.
comment on his comments. Sorry.
It's hard to be a parent. Absolutely. Like, and it's our job to to have a hard job. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. So, but on that same side, like, I totally agree with like everything else that he said. Like, you're lifting a mask mandate and you're going to be next to them, even for weeks prior to a trip that you're going on. Like the trip is at the end of April and the mask mandate is being lifted in schools next Monday, right? Like, so you're going to be next to them for weeks, so like logically in my brain, like it just doesn't make sense, so and it's hard because like, we were the family that was like, stay home for the week after break and all of this, super extra careful about everything. You have a baby up, like, so we're trying to be, cross the T's and dot the I's, but then like, if it's going to be one way today, but it's not going to be that way, for a trip, it just doesn't logically make sense. So that's what I'm having. That's what I got, I guess. Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Okay, last one is Josh Guerrero.
I'm gonna stand here just because I look more intimidating than
I knew you.
Well, I just want to say that I think it's awfully ironic that we had some of the pictures that we're going through earlier, and we had the one with the no elephants allowed. And this whole school is everything's preaching inclusion. And then we have this situation now where we're talking about exclusion. And to me, it just, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, are we practicing what we're preaching? We have all these signs everywhere, you know, trying to include everybody. But then what we're doing is we're separating people at the same time. It just, and it sends a confusing message to the students and to the parents, frankly, as well. I don't know where we stand either. So, I mean, like, if we're going to practice what we have to be very careful to practice what we preach. Otherwise, we'll start to preach what we're practicing. And very, very subconsciously, we're going to start telling these kids that, look, excluding people are okay. And that's the danger that we're at right now. Is yes, we're telling them include, but when the kids are looking and saying, wait, but we're putting kids in separate places, that's actually preaching that at the same time. So I just want to make sure that we all know we're all on the same page. If we're going to be teaching this, we need to practice this. Otherwise, we're not preaching this, we're preaching what we're practicing. That's all I got to say. Mic drop.
Sorry. Been drunk plenty of times on my head. Sorry. Explained a lot. Okay, any other discussion?
It does make sense, and I do understand. I think what we're just trying to make everybody happy.
Yeah, so I will speak. So there's no one here kind of representing the other side. They felt disenfranchised because Sunol Glen has been a place of kindness. The 2 years has been hard on everybody. And what has impressed me to the end of the day is, and Sunol Glen is a microcosm. I mean, we have parents on both sides of the spectrum, right, politically and on issues. And yet we've never, it's never gotten unseemly. We've never had to shut down a board meeting. We weren't picketed out front by parents that were, how dare you talk about opening the school? And how dare you not open the school? Which I got emails like that. I get emails that said, why aren't you opening back in, you know, whatever, April of 2020 or October of 2021, right? Oh, it's all a blur. Anyway, when we were closed, I would get emails from both sides, and you guys know we have the town halls, and there was people felt strongly against one way or the other. And it was really hard because we serve all kids, we serve all families, and we constantly were looking for how do we navigate through trying to be respectful to very different opinions. And by the way, the staff, same. There were some teachers that were, how can you talk about opening? I'm terrified. And other teachers that are, I can't stand it, let me back. And so it was hard. It was a very, very challenging last 2 years. And now here we are. We're not out of, we're just not done. I don't know what this residual, you know, the pandemic and COVID and all this stuff. You know, I remember when we opened school this year, we're like, oh, the kids are back. It's going to be normal. And it hasn't been. I mean, it's not normal to wear a mask and not see little kindergartners. I don't know, they're missing their teeth. You know, they tell me, I used to always know when kids were missing their teeth. I feel so sad. I all of a sudden they're eating and I see, and I'm like, oh my gosh, when did you miss a tooth? So I'm really disappointed that I'm missing out on those milestones. All right, so as we said, in December, it was December, James, that's when this amendment came through. It was a choice of not going again for the 3rd year in a row or finding a way to go. That was the decision that was made to have. And remember, at this time, the governor's like, everybody's got to get vaccinated to be in school. So this was going to be in April. In order to attend school in August 2022, you're going to have to be, it's going to be required vaccination, no exemptions. Now, is that going to happen or not? Who knows? But that's what the messaging was, right? So this all made sense. Now, here we are 2 months later, 3 months later, things are different. However, parents, we do have a high number of kids that are vaccinated. The predominance of our kids are vaccinated, or a high percentage. So parents were like, well, I'm nervous about an overnight field trip. Even before the pandemic, parents are really nervous about overnight field trips. Okay, but under these circumstances, you know, we're going to go. So they made their decision on that. And I think it's important that we be respectful of that. I can answer you. What's the difference between a bus and a cabin? You won't be wearing your mask on the bus. You will be with the kids that are nervous about this are going to be wearing a mask. It's optional. So they're going to be wearing their masks potentially, or can't, if their parents are still feeling it. Same thing with school. It's the exact same thing at school. Outside right now, it's optional. You can come by on any day. There are kids wearing masks outside this whole time. And it's always been optional since August 8th, 3rd, whenever we started. So I bet you on March 14th, when we tell the kids it's not required, we're still gonna have a lot of kids wearing their masks. And we're gonna have kids that don't wear their masks. And as a Sunol Glen community, we're gonna be respectful. We're not gonna require kids to wear a mask. We're not gonna make them feel bad. We're gonna make sure other kids don't make them feel bad. And I didn't see that ever outside. I didn't see kids going up to unmasked kids and saying, why aren't you putting your mask on? Or the reverse, why are you wearing a mask? I feel like our kids are, again, we're sort of navigating through that all. So if parents are nervous and they're gonna go, they're gonna say, okay, wear a mask. I already have parents emailing me, I don't want my kid in the dining hall there. Because right now our kids mostly eat outside. We bubble the kids inside, only 5th graders inside and only 1st graders. The kids are all outside. Science camp, it's inside. I already have parents saying, can I have the kids eat outside? Just like the school. So, but the problem with the cabin is, so if those parents are saying, I want my kid to have an option of wearing the mask during science camp, hiking, wearing your science camp, or excuse me, wearing your mask. The cabin, those parents don't want their kids to wear a mask because that's really hard to sleep on wearing a mask. And if so, their feeling of safety and protection and us being respectful is, I want that feeling that my child, and I've had parents say, if that's not the case, they're not going. So just to the point about we want,
Just to say they want to go,
excuse me.
anyways.
Yeah, we're just,
Yeah, okay.
Just to say the point that the kids that are unvaccinated, we wanted them to go, we're trying to find a way. We also need to be equally respectful to the parents that are nervous. And they are not to be made fun of. They're not to be, you're being ridiculous. That's their feeling. And then some of them have very strong health reasons about what's going on with them, about why they are nervous and why under these conditions, I'm letting my child go. But I'll just be personal myself. My mother is dying. She has very rare, horrible form of cancer. I am somebody that's a little bit of, I don't always wear my mask when I'm here because it's optional outside. I wear it inside because it's required right now. Next week, I probably won't be wearing it much. But when I go to my mom's, I wear my mask because I will be darned if I'm the one that gives her any cold, COVID, flu, whatever. I'm gonna wear a mask. So that's my story. Like Stephanie, I loved how you said that. Everybody has stories and has their reason for wanting to remain unvaccinated or for wanting to remain vaccinated. And I think, again, the Sunol Glen way is to be respectful of that. So this was a way of trying our hardest to come up with a compromise that can make kids go. Is it perfect? No. Are there parts of it the pro-vaccinated people don't like? Yeah. Are there parts of it the unvaccinated people don't like? Yes. I loved what James said. The definition of a compromise is you leave feeling not that great. That's the definition of a compromise, because by definition, you have to give in. And that's how we as a society work as a community of kindness and getting something done and always doing our very best for all students. Now that's a mic drop. There you go. Yeah.
yeah, and this, just to finish up on the conversation, I've got my kindness at all times. Not on my wrist, it's on my wallet.
too.
So I think that, along the lines of James was saying, this has been such a polarizing issue. It's really, there's people on both sides, super strong opinions, and people in the middle who either don't have an opinion or I see both sides. And there's nothing wrong with having those strong opinions on either side. Nothing wrong. I encourage it. I encourage everyone here speaking in public. What I'm getting to is the however, and I hope that all of us here and people who aren't here, maybe someone's listening. I don't know if they're going to listen to the recording later on, but I think there's things that have been said among our parents, even maybe in front of our kids, or our kids are saying it to our kids. If we could just encourage everybody to remember, what we're here for is for the kids, to educate our kids and to have them in a safe and healthy environment. No matter what kind of diseases are out there, no matter what kind of things we do. This was a compromise that we came up with based on the information that we had. Yeah, in December, it was a lot worse. And then, you know, in a week from now, when the zippity doo-dah variant comes out, what are we gonna do then? I don't know, but at least we've got some guidelines. Maybe at our next board meeting, we might even say we can just toss this whole thing out and everybody can go mixed up. I have no idea, but the bottom line is I think there's maybe some things were said, people need to apologize for, and then the other people need to forgive them for it, you know, on both sides. Because there are people who are very judgy, like, oh, why don't you get a vaccine? Or I can't wait to get rid of this thing, personally. I chose to get a vaccination because we had to get on campus. I really didn't want to get one, but it would have been really hard to have, you know, remote meetings. I'd have to be on Zoom or something. So I guess I gave in, but wasn't what I wanted to do. So I understand all the people who say, I really don't want my kid to get this, or I want to be a chaperone, but I can't because I'm not vaccinated. It's a tough position. But anyway, the point was that I hope people can mend fences, appreciate and understand the other people's story, because everybody's got a story about why they're in favor, why they're against. I think my 3 minutes are up. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm done, and then we're gonna finish up.
So I just wanted to share that sometimes not everyone knows the full story of other people's situations. And like anything, like you were saying, Mike, there's a spectrum, and there's often a bell curve. And you have people on the ends that aren't very happy with things in the middle. And although I don't personally agree with everything on here, and like we've said, compromise, everyone feels like there's things that they don't agree with. This was a way for us to get the widest swath of people to come together. And I feel for the people on this side who say, you know, if it weren't for this, my child wouldn't be able to go one way or the other. Or the people on this side who say, if it weren't for this, my child wouldn't be able to go. I feel especially bad for the people who still, even with this, can't or won't go. I hope all children can go. I hope they can all have that opportunity. And this whole COVID issue is a great test, a litmus test, and a challenge for us to have our own opinion and be accepting and respecting of other people's opinions. So I hope that we can all learn through this process.
Okay, so we have a motion, and a second, and the discussion's over. So we're gonna vote. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Great. And thanks everybody for showing up to the meeting, and it's been a long one. Usually our meetings aren't this long. So you really had to suffer through a lot to get to this.
Suffer. Great
I mean,
presentation.
Karen,
I know,
but,
thank you, teachers too, and Karen for coming out.
Yeah. Okay, moving on, and feel free if you don't want to stick around for the last part, if you want to quietly get up and leave, but don't discuss like right outside the doors. But we're almost done. 9.6 is report discussion of possible action regarding the acceptance and approval of Sunol Glen Unified School District's 2020-2021 audit report conducted by E.D. Bailey LLP.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, number 10 is consent items. Can lump these all together.
Yeah.
10.1 through 10.4. I move to approve all the consent items.
My second.
Any discussion? Discussion at all? Or,
No.
I just wanted to say, you know, one of these is approval of donations. That's okay. We'll get to. There was a science camp donation from Supervisor David Hobert.
Yeah,
And is that
$1,000, which would fund at least provide scholarship for 2 students to be able to attend. So hopefully to help support the financial implications. Yeah.
Great. And then there was also a PE equipment suppliers donation. Michael
Very
Christiani.
generous, very generous donation of, I think the birdies that the kids are playing with now are from them. I mean, just a ton of equipment that they're already putting to use.
Is this a school parent or a?
He was retiring from
A teacher that had his own personal items and he didn't want to lug it to, probably his spouse said, get rid of it, we're not moving that. So he moved it right on over, so we're the beneficiary. But there was a lot of good equipment, balls, yeah,
That's
little birdies.
okay. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, no,
Appreciation.
generous.
I know we always send thank you letters to them.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then the calendar coming up, April 5th, May 10th, June 14th, and then June 28th. Is that our special?
Yeah, the 28th is because you have to have the LCAP presented, and then you have to have a delay, and then it goes through for approval a couple weeks later. Sorry, I know it's challenging.
Okay, thank you. And number 12 is closing comments from the board.
No, I don't have any.
Okay, great. We're gonna go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everybody. For coming.
Thank you for everybody coming.
Thank you.
We love an audience.